Okay, so here's my top 5 personal development books that I've read so far this year. Number 1 is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. This book is absolutely fantastic. It's really inspiring, really motivational. David Goggins talks about his really difficult upbringing that he had, and then how he found his way or worked his way really hard to become a Navy SEAL. Takes us through his whole sort of life story, all the difficulties he came up against, the challenges that he faced, how he overcame them. He gives really good advice to people in terms of pushing yourself forward, getting uncomfortable. He talks about the way the Marines talk about the 40% rule. So the idea that once you've got to, or you feel as though you've got to full capacity when you're doing something, you're generally only at 40%, so you can keep going. This guy is really inspiring. He's obviously one of a kind. He's very tough. He's very able to really kind of push himself. He's very stoic. He really talks about how he finds that his life mission is to kind of make himself as uncomfortable as possible in every situation. So what he talks about isn't necessarily for everyone, but it's definitely really good advice in terms of becoming successful in life and changing yourself. And he obviously felt as though he really wanted to push himself and force a change in his life, and that's exactly what he did, and he's achieved huge success. It's a really, really inspiring book. So I can't recommend that one enough. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I listened to it on Audible. I haven't read the hard copy. I listened to it. Really good. It was narrated by him. Yeah, really interesting book. There was also some interviews as well in the Audible version as well, which sort of add to it as well. It's a fantastic book. Next one, this one I'm sure most of you heard of as well, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is a bit of a modern phenomenon. He's absolutely fantastic. He puts out loads of material on YouTube. Lots of his lectures are shown on YouTube. He's one of the first people I came across a couple of years ago when I started on my personal development journey. I made a decision that I wanted to really kind of up my game and improve things for myself. I got to a point in my life where I felt as though I was kind of doing okay. I consider myself to be very fortunate. I've got 2 young kids, lovely wife, and all that sort of stuff. But I didn't feel as though I was fulfilling my potential. So I started listening to Jordan Peterson, and some of the stuff that he talks about in his lectures, some of the advice that he gives, the approach that he's taken, the angle that he takes, really refreshing, really interesting. A few people don't like him, but then that's always going to be the way with someone like that. The point is that the stuff he comes out with, the stories that he gives online, the stories that he puts into his chapters in this book, really, really good. A lot from his own personal experience growing up and over the years. And this book is really, really good. It's the sort of thing I wish I'd read when I was much younger. I'm now 38. Had I read this when I was sort of in my early 20s, late teens, then, who knows? I mean, I don't have any regrets, but I may well have sort of done a bit better in terms of my career and things like that. It's my own self-development. Fantastic book. Definitely give that one a go. What else have we got here? We have this book. I've reviewed this book before very quickly in one of my reviews that sort of take under a minute. Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley. Daniel Priestley is great in his books in terms of putting out really clear information on what you need to do to improve your business. I have a business which I started 5 years ago. I was very lucky to get a lot of work through word of mouth, did pretty well for the first few years. And then I didn't really know anything about the sort of stuff that he talks about in this book, so things kind of died down a little bit. The business is still going, but this has really given things a real sort of kick, a real boost. And it is really clear, it's really easy to read, really motivating and inspiring to get through. The information, the advice that he gives is sure to give any business a real help if you don't really know about marketing and kind of getting yourself out there online and stuff, and kind of how you can service your customers in a much more effective way. This book is absolutely invaluable. The other one he does as well is Entrepreneur Revolution. That's worth reading as well. Absolutely fantastic. That's probably equally just as good as this, but this is probably my favourite of his, and one of the favourites that I've read out of the hundreds of books, self-development books I've read recently. Really recommend this one. If you want to make a change to your business, definitely give this one a go. And take it all in, make notes, use it. It's really, really valuable, this book. The other one I want to talk about, I haven't got the hard copy here, I listened to this one on Audible, is Life in Half a Second by Matthew Michaelwich. Really, really good book. I have to say the front cover when I saw it didn't particularly inspire me very much, just a personal thing. but I gave it a go, and it's such a good book to listen to. Like I say, I haven't read the hard copy yet, but listening to it on Audible, really, really good. It's narrated by Matthew. He's got a great voice, I think. He comes across really well. He comes across really passionate. The way he reads the book, you can tell that it was him that wrote it, which gives it that extra edge, I think, when you're listening to it. He manages to kind of weave stories into his advice as well, which reminded me a little bit of the book The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma. They're both very different books, but it just almost has that slight sort of fairy tale feel to it. When I say fairy tale, I don't mean that it's not real, because all the advice he gives is kind of like from his experience as a successful entrepreneur and businessman. But he manages to give it this kind of otherworldly sort of mystical feel, which I think is really appealing. It's done really, really well, and he also offers lots of sort of free information online as well that you can find on his website. Fantastic book, really, really worthwhile. Give that one a go. Listen to it on Audible or wherever you can get it. I really enjoyed that one. The last one is one that probably a lot of you haven't heard of, and you probably wouldn't expect to be in a top 5 list for personal development books, but King of the Gypsies by Bartley Gorman. This book is one of my favourite books of all time. I read it years ago. I've read it a few times since. Really enjoy it. Bartley Gorman was considered to be the king of the gypsies in terms of the bare knuckle boxers during the 80s, I think. I hope I've got that right. It's been a while since I read it. I think it was during the 80s. And real kind of old school stories about the gypsies back then, his upbringing, the fights that he got into, his ancestors before him, his granddad and his great-granddad, who were both king. I think they were both king of the gypsies as well. The stories that he tells are really, really fascinating. I can't get enough of this kind of book. I wish there were more books written like this about the gypsies and bare knuckle boxing, but I don't seem to find very many. This is definitely the best one I've read. I think he's a distant relative of Tyson Fury as well, somewhere along the line. I don't want to get that wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's a link there somewhere as well if you look that up. But yeah, really interesting guy. There's not much information, there's not much video footage of him at all, particularly on YouTube, but there are bits here and there. I think he took part in a bit of a documentary once, and it shows him kind of sparring outside his caravan, wherever it was that he lived. Really fascinating guy, really worth the read. I consider it to be a self-development book because it's just so inspiring in terms of this guy obviously had his real spot-on mindset right from the word go. He knew he was going to be king of the gypsies. It was his destiny as he saw it, and he just did everything it took to get there, which included some serious, like, proper hard fights along the way, proper difficult, painful situations that he got into again and again. But for me, it's a mindset thing. He had the mindset that no one was going to beat him. He was going to fulfill his destiny like his grandfather and his great-granddad before him. And he did it, and the story he tells is just really, really fascinating, really, really interesting. I can't recommend that book enough. Like I say, it's not quite so well known, but yeah, definitely give that one a go. Quite an unexpected self-development book in a way, but yeah, even if you're not into self-development, it's worth reading. It's just really fascinating. Cheers.